Barry Season 4, Episode 7 dropped on Sunday, and it's probably the best of the season so far. After the extremely hype ending of the last episode, where Jim Moss kidnaps Barry and sets him up in the torture garage, I assumed that would be a lot of the episode. However, these plots quickly split when Barry reveals to Jim that he gave Gene Cousineau $250,000, and Jim is just kind of like, okay, well now that's my number one priority. So he leaves, and to be honest, Barry, the main character in the second to last episode, kind of just spends the rest of the episode stumbling around the house until the very end. And it's a little disappointing, probably my least favorite part of the episode, but I don't fully mind it, and it is still funny when he kind of just keels over and passes out of blood loss because he cut his hand. It's weird, but I'll take it. The show already proved in It Takes a Psycho, episode 4, that it can work without Barry, so let's check in on the side characters, or at least the main characters that aren't in the title. First of all, there's Cousineau. Cousineau has one of my favorite plots, and over the last 3 episodes, I've been invested in his plot the whole time, even in Tricky Legacies. But here is when things really begin to kick off. Cousineau is informed by this new acting, casting guy that apparently, in this biopic that they're making on Barry, Daniel Day-Lewis is set to play Gene. And later, when he meets with the guy to discuss, he learns that Mark Wahlberg is meant to play Barry, but he doesn't want to play a cop killer, which is so incredible that they put that in. Because of this, Gene is tempted by the fame yet again, and he decides that he's going to do the meeting to try to convince Mark Wahlberg that Barry is a sensitive soul, and that there's more to him than just a cop killer. And that just clearly shows that he doesn't actually really have the morals that he says he does. I was rooting for the guy to change, but this show has said time and time again that they don't, and I can't expect him to actually do it for real. However, it's a trap, as the agent brings him instead, not to a room with Mark Wahlberg in it, but to a room with Jim Moss, his son Leo, D.A. Buckner, and somehow Chief Krause, Big Cat, who is still the chief after 8 years and looks exactly the same. They tell him the shocking twist that, actually, they believe that he was working with Barry the whole time, and even got him to kill Janice Moss, Jim's daughter, and Cousineau's love interest. And that is a very, very fun twist. It kind of comes out of nowhere. It really is not expected, at least to me. Maybe I'm dumb, but I didn't see it coming. And I love it. I mean, the reason that I'm starting with Cousineau in the first place is because he actually has a pretty separate plot, while the other 4 main characters are interacting with each other all the time. So this gives him the perfect opportunity to get involved with the others, especially Barry. I kind of feel like he might go to Barry and try to get Barry to get him out of this situation, which would be crazy, but they haven't met yet, and they're going to have to at some point, so I see that happening. This also mirrors the Season 2 finale, where Cousineau was basically arrested for the same thing, but they let him go. And unfortunately, after all this time, it's caught up to the guy, and it does not look good, even though we know that the accusations are not right. So there's Cousineau, and then in the meantime, you have my personal favorite plot of the episode, probably, which is Hank versus Fuchs. After Fuchs's comments in the last episode to Hank about Cristobal, Hank essentially is just like, okay, we're gonna kill Fuchs. And that's a lot harder than it seems. The first attempt is the Foo Box, which is a ridiculous plot. People have mentioned before that, yeah, Hank is really bad at picking assassins. Since he can't get Barry, he has to keep hiring these low-level guys, and these guys actually seem to be pretty good, until, of course, they aren't. My personal favorite being the guy who started 6 coups, but says, nah, it was more like 4.5. Love that guy. Love him. Unfortunately, his head is sent back in a box. All of their heads are sent back in boxes in one of the best scenes of the entire episode, where Hank delivers one of my favorite lines of the entire episode. It's their heads. It's their heads. It is 4 boxes on a table with a little bit of blood coming out the bottom. It's pretty obvious what that is. And of course, since that didn't work, Hank says, okay, we're just going to go straight to him. We're going to go and try to kill him. While this is happening, Fuchs is having a conversation about the head shopping with his new family. And it's It's really something you just have to witness. Honestly, just look up the Fast and Furious scene from Barry Season 4, Episode 7. I can't even begin to describe it. It's something special. But then begins my real favorite scene in the episode. Hank and one of his henchmen, one of his partner guys, they go and they try to blow up Fuchs's house by themselves. And so they set up a rocket, which is crazy, and it's even more crazy when you see that the rocket goes straight off course, which makes sense. And then they say that's their only rocket. Well, the henchman says that. Hank is like, what? Hank, somehow being the sensible one here, is thinking ahead and is like, yeah, we're probably not going to get it on the first try. Meanwhile, the henchman apparently doesn't have more rockets because of budget cuts. And that is so Barry. Of course, Hank and his henchman now have to flee, and his henchman gets killed, because of course he does. And then Hank escapes in this stupid and amazing one shot where you see him in the far distance and Fuchs is calling him, and then he rolls down a hill while on the phone. I, again, can't even describe it. This show is special. After Barry's little blood loss interlude, we pick back up with Hank, who is not looking too good, and clearly the attacks on Fuchs are not working, so Hank is like, okay, we're gonna need to get him Barry. Previously, Fuchs had asked for Barry, and Hank denied, but now, if he doesn't get Barry, Fuchs is gonna kill him. So he has to, in any way possible, and he says, it's time to go get the acting teachers, which is crazy, because Hank and Kusino had never interacted. But that's not what we're getting. Because now we gotta talk about Sally. So Sally and John arrive back in Los Angeles, where Sally calls Kusino so that she can come over to his house. And he says, yeah, I'll be there, just wait there for me, and I'll be there eventually. He is not, because of course he ends up going to the meeting to talk with Mark Wahlberg. And so, Sally is left out there alone and captured by Hank, which is an incredible turn of events. Like I said when I was talking about Kusino, the other four characters kind of all have plots that play into each other, and the fact that Hank and Sally meet, but not Hank and Kusino, really, really smart. I like this writing a lot. So, with one final bit left, Kusino is possibly in prison. Fuchs is at more power than ever. Hank has Sally and John captured in his goddamn garage. He calls Barry, and in this intimidating voice call shows that, once again, Anthony Carrigan can act like hell. And he gives this very intimidating moment where he says, basically, come here if you want to see your family again. And I do not think he's confronting Barry. I mean, people have already said it, but I'm pretty sure that Hank is just going to get Barry to come to Fuchs's address and have the two of them fight instead, which is so perfect, so beautiful. Barry and Fuchs also have not interacted since the time skip, and they have to, so here we go. So that's the episode recap, the episode review. Not yet over, because I have to mention, one more time, I really do love how every character's plot plays into each other. Even Kusino, who I did say had a more separated plot, has multiple roles that he is playing in other places, just he doesn't really interact with them that much. When he calls Sally, he gets her to go to his house, and that is, of course, why she is picked up. Again, brilliant writing. Also, a scene I felt like I should mention is when Sally talks to that cop and says that she wants to turn herself in. This seems like an impromptu decision. She just saw a cop and decided, well, I kind of got nothing else I'm doing, I may as well turn myself in. But once again, during that, we get a Sally horror scene, which is really rough. It kind of sucks, but Sally is the only one getting horror scenes, and she's gotten them like every single episode. So, here, we have yet another callback to the man that she killed in Season 3, Episode 8. One of my favorite episodes. Maybe my favorite episode of Barry. And it's clearly very traumatic. It's great because Barry seems to experience nothing from all the people that he's killed. I mean, maybe a little, but not too much. Sally has killed one person in self-defense, and it has plagued her for 8 years. It's brutal, but it shows that she's much more human than Barry, even if nearly every character in the show is. I mean, I'll say it every time, but incredible directing by Bill Hader. You have that scene with the horror Sally scene, a classic, and then you have the one shot scene with Hank shooting the rocket. You have that incredible shot when they cut to Hank behind all of the boxes of the Foo Box heads. I love the directing in this show. I love the writing. I love the editing. I really, really enjoyed this episode. This is also the first episode that convinced me fully of the time skip being a good decision. I still don't love it, and I do think it would have been possible to continue the show from where it was, even if it would have been very difficult, because Barry essentially would have been a top level criminal on the run, which would be a little weird. But this episode really helps because one thing I love is seeing characters who apparently in canon have not spoken in like 8 years finally talk for the first time again. Barry having not heard Hank's voice in 8 years, finally hearing it and learning from Hank that his family has been captured is an incredible dramatic moment. It's really beautiful. And the last thing I want to discuss is who's gonna die. Listen, it's a crime drama, it's the final episode, and the main character is completely off the rails insane. Somebody is gonna die, if not, like, everyone. I think definitely the most likely ones are Barry and Fuchs. I feel like Barry and Fuchs have been the most likely characters to die of the main characters for pretty much the entire show. Then there's Kusino and Hank, who I think are a step below. Hank is probably one that would just be done for shock value to fuck with the fans, but at the same time, in the place he's in, he is a very likely death, as he's basically Barry's enemy right now. Then you have Kusino, who kind of just feels like the kindly citizen type death. You know, he's not a very kindly citizen, he's an asshole, but, you know, if you take Kusino and Sally and compare them against each other, I think Kusino is a lot more likely to die than Sally is, and so I'd put him up for grabs as well. Any way you cut it, I think Sally is the least likely of the main characters to go, but anything is possible. Like I said, all of them could die. That could be the way they're taking it, you know? Every single main character all dead in one episode. Who knows? Would be kind of crazy, but this show is kind of crazy. The worst thing about this is that I am watching the Succession finale first. It's gonna premiere. I'm gonna watch it first, and then I'm gonna watch Barry, and I'm gonna have to deal with all of the built up stress that I accumulate through the Succession finale, and then go into an even more stressful show right after. Jesus Christ, please pray for me. I I don't think I'm making it out of this one. I don't think I'm making another one of these videos. I think I'll die of these finales. But it's gonna be fun.